This absolute beast of an amp is a Metaltronix M1000. It's a Lee Jackson designed 3-channel all-tube amplifier. I got an email a couple of months ago from someone called Jason. Send Jason some love in the comments in advance because this is pretty awesome. Jason asked if I was interested in making some demos with a bunch of gear that they've got. And when they sent through the list of gear, my jaw hit the floor. There's so many desirable items. For me, anyway, stuff that I've been trying to track down for well over a decade. Some of them like this, probably for over 15 years after seeing print ads in magazines with players like Paul Gilbert and Zach Wilde back in the day using Metaltronix amps. I've always been really curious. I mean, it's such a name for the late 80s, early 90s, right? Like, what sort of amp do you play? Metaltronix. Oh, you must play metal. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, long story short, Jason was kind enough to loan me this amp. There's a bunch of other gear that hopefully I will be demoing on the channel very soon. Let's just kind of dive into what this does. The controls are fairly straightforward, yet they interact with one another in a unique way. There's a bunch of stuff on the back like effects loops. There's a bunch of foot switch jacks on here and pretty standard stuff like speaker outputs and impedance selectors. But we want to hear this. Let's go. I've got all the push-pull controls pushed in, and the way I'm treating this moderate gain channel on here is basically just like a plexi with a master volume. So I've got the bass low, the middle and treble are up around 2 o'clock. I've cranked up the presence control on there. The channel volume, which is going to be the gain control for this channel, is just below noon, similar to the system level on here. And then I've got the main master volume control around 10 or 11 o'clock. Let's just have a listen to the effect that the master and the system level have on one another. So if I've got the system level up a little bit higher and I've got the master quite low, we get this. There's a little less fizz with the master up higher on there. It also feels a little bit tighter. So I'm going to roll with that system level quite low. Let's have a listen to the impact that the mid-shift control has, and we'll start with it at the lowest or thinnest setting on here, and I'll just click through the different increments. Mid-shift is pretty interesting. I haven't really seen another control like that on an amp from this era, but to me, it almost sweeps you from more of the scooped, aggressive JCM 800 style thing to more of that fat, plexi or JTM style sound on there. If I want to add an extra gain stage on top of all of that, I can pull this stage 2 volume control over here, which engages that extra gain stage, and then I've got the actual sweep of the knob to dial in the extra gain. So if I keep it low and engage it, this is what we're going to get. Pretty interesting. You can hear those two gain controls on there are interactive. I'm guessing there's a bright cap across the kind of normal channel volume 1 or gain control on there. So the lower you have that, the more the bright cap is active, and generally the tighter and brighter the sound is on there. So my preference was kind of keeping this somewhere around noon and just using the stage 2 control, thinking of it like an extra tube boost on there. So cranking that gain up to get that saturation. The mid-shift control is interesting on there. That is, again, interacting with all of these things. The whole control panel on here is quite straightforward, but it is very interactive on there, which can be a challenge if you're just used to like a Marshall style amp that's got a single channel. You put the bass, middle, and treble where they are and they do the thing. There's a lot of room to get different shades of the same tone out of this. And then we've got the second master volume. So this basically internally attenuates the amp in there. So what you can do with that is keep that low, you pull this pot to engage it, and then you can crank the master over there. Let's have a listen to what that does. definitely the vibe on there. You can hear by cranking that master using the built-in attenuator on there, it just sounds more brown, for use of a better term. I mean, that was the sound everyone was chasing in that era, and it's kind of nailing it on there. It's a lot more compressed and squishy on there. I don't think this is really going to do your kind of modern chugga-chugga sounds without some kind of boost in front. But that's pretty awesome. Like, I'm just conceptualizing this as basically a modified plexi with an extra gain stage and a really good master volume in there, so you can crank up the power section, you can hit the front end in there and get that thing. I'm going to swap over to a different guitar just so we can hear some different tones with these settings. But yeah, having that master all the way up and then using the attenuator kind of brings it to life for me. This was an okay amp until I tried that, and now it's just got that extra something happening in there. Camera went and died, and I don't have my charger with me, so I'm going to do the conclusion now and then put up some clips that I filmed with my Strat at the end of this so that you can hear the clean channel as well as some dirty sounds with the Strat. We heard at the end there, this can do the grungy tones of the early 90s pretty well. However, I've been using greenbacks with all of this. I actually don't have a speaker cabinet with anything except greenbacks at the moment. And I do wonder if maybe hearing this with vintage 30s or even some G12T75s or Celestion lead 80s speakers, something error appropriate, would match up well with this amp. A lot of these amps, as we know, are kind of voiced around particular speaker combinations. And I feel like the tones that I gravitated towards with this were more that kind of late 70s, early 80s modded Marshall thing. And I don't know if this amp can do more than that, if there's just a lot of controls on there that basically give you more of the same thing, or whether pairing it up with some different speakers or with some different guitars, you know, maybe a guitar with some EMGs in it would have been a good choice with this. But it's definitely got a sound. It's not my favorite modded Marshall style amp that I've ever tried on here. It doesn't really sound the way I expected it to based on the way it looks and the players I associate with it. I expected it maybe to sound a little bit more like an 80A MP1 or something like that. And I don't think it sounds like that. I think it definitely sounds a lot more like sort of like a Jose modded Plexi or something like that. The control choices on there are interesting, and I have to say a little bit infuriating when you go to twist a knob or you want to pull one of those controls to activate a channel and you end up changing your settings on there. I feel like the sort of modern day approach that you might see on a Friedman or a Cherrytone, where you just have little switches to do all of that so that you can have the switch where you want it and then have the knob just as something to twist rather than the push-pull knobs. But, you know, that's a design choice of the era. It keeps everything kind of efficient, but there is all this like unused space here that's just used for the logo. I feel like some switches might have been a better idea on there. Having said that, I feel super fortunate to finally try an amp that I've been trying to hunt down for so long. An amp that, you know, when you look at it, you go, well, that's going to sound a particular way. And maybe those preconceptions that I had going in were challenged a little bit. Maybe they also weren't, because, you know, it's basically doing that kind of various shades of brown sound thing on there, but a very cool amp to be able to check out. Send Jason some love in the comment section below, and hopefully I'll be able to check out some other very cool pieces of gear that Jason has available that we'll be able to see on the channel. And again, it's just nice for someone like me who I only ever saw photos of these amps to actually be able to plug it in, make some noise with it, and hopefully you've been able to watch this clip and learn a little bit about what this amp can do, albeit with just a couple of guitars and a single speaker and mic set up on there. Again, all the usual caveats. Anyway, if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, links to support me directly are in the video description. Let's hear this with a Strat now. I'll play you all out. Enjoy.